Good morning. This informational meeting of the House Consumer Protection, Technology, and Utilities Committee will come to order. We are convened today to receive a briefing on various aspects of the natural gas industry, from upstream production to midstream and to downstream on the electric utility. This will also be an opportunity for members to learn about the role of the industry in our Commonwealth's energy landscape and to explore the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead from different perspectives. Natural gas continues to be a cornerstone of our energy supply for many of our constituents. However, we must continue to prioritize environmental stewardship. We don't have to choose between clean energy and economic development. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a false trade-off. Here in Pennsylvania, rich in energy resources, we understand those dynamics intimately. Today, we will hear from experts, industry leaders, and stakeholders who will set the stage for further discussion beyond this meeting. I recognize Chairman Metzger for any opening remarks.
No, I just defer my time to the testifiers so we can ask lots of questions.
Members, I ask that you hold your questions to until we have the last speaker. And speakers, I respectfully request that, in the sake of time, because we have to leave this room at 11 a.m., please be as brief as possible. We will now begin with the Clean Air Council. Please identify yourself for the record.
How's this?
There
Perfect.
we go.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Alice Liu. I'm the policy analyst at Clean Air Council. I thank you all for being here today and for giving me this opportunity to speak. Clean Air Council is an environmental nonprofit with members across the state, and we work to protect everyone's right to a healthy environment. So, starting off, the gas industry can be broken down into three segments. I'm sure you'll hear much more about it from our panelists, my fellow panelists here today, but I can just touch briefly. Generally, upstream encompasses the production and processing of gas. Midstream includes transmission and storage infrastructure, and downstream deals with the distribution pipelines that brings gas to end users. So gas itself primarily consists of methane. Methane is a powerful greenhouse gas that accelerates climate change when burned or when it leaks. So health impacts really have to be a central part of any conversation about consumer protections. In addition to methane, fracked gas also includes other hydrocarbons like volatile organic compounds and hazardous air pollutants. These two classes of compounds are associated with serious health effects in humans. So this includes cancer, as well as respiratory, immune system, neurological, reproductive, and developmental harms. Pollutants like these can also leak throughout all segments of the gas industry and also in the home. There are nearly 1.5 million people in Pennsylvania who live within half a mile of an active oil or gas well, compressor station, or processing plant, and these are the people disproportionately exposed to this pollution. There are over 2,000 peer-reviewed health-based studies that have demonstrated links between fracking and a whole host of other health issues. One Pennsylvania-based study conducted by the University of Pittsburgh in 2023 found increased risks of asthma and childhood lymphoma in those living near gas wells. And I spoke to Walter Tsu, who is a board member of Physicians for Social Responsibility Pennsylvania. He's also a retired physician, as well as the past president of the American Public Health Association and former health commissioner of Philadelphia. And he summarized the study by saying, "To ignore the health risks of fracking jeopardizes the health of Pennsylvanians who live above the Marcellus Shale and should be a strong impetus to accelerate a move to renewable green energy." So instituting health protections for Pennsylvanians living near oil and gas operations is something the General Assembly should definitely explore. One policy currently in the works is at DEP, actually, who's responsible for designing the state plan to implement the Environmental Protection Agency's methane rule. This was finalized back in March of 2024, and it aims to curb emissions from of methane from the oil and gas industry through the use of readily available and cost-effective technologies. Another central issue is the issue of consumer costs here. Pennsylvania produces a record amount of gas, but only uses about 25% of it. So it raises the question, why are our energy bills still so high? Most of Pennsylvania's gas is exported, meaning we compete with consumers in other states as well as around the world for the same resource. And the DOE has warned that this can lead to a triple cost increase, resulting from higher gas prices, electricity prices, and consumer prices that end up being passed down to the consumer from manufacturers. Pennsylvania's over-reliance on gas is holding back diverse renewable energy development because when gas generation fails, as occurred during Winter Storm Elliott, there's little to nothing to back it up, and ratepayers end up bearing the cost. So last summer's PJM capacity market auction exposed how the Commonwealth's historic reliance on gas, combined with our lack of alternatives, made it so that electric rates in the region spiked starting as early as this month. Our over-reliance on gas is leading us towards an energy insecure future. This general hesitation to adopt more clean energy in Pennsylvania is largely unwarranted. There are other states, such as Texas, which leads the country in gas production, but also leads in overall renewable energy generation that's demonstrating it's possible to embrace and benefit from renewable energy while also having a thriving gas industry. The gas industry has yet to deliver on their promise of economic prosperity and community development. So a 2023 Ohio River Valley Institute report found a net loss of over 10,000 jobs, attenuated income growth, and worsened population loss between the years of 2008 and 2021. These are happening within the fracking regions where the industry is pervasive. There are Pennsylvanians who definitely rely on the gas industry for their livelihood, and we really have to think about how best to prepare them for jobs in the energy sector that are not only cleaner and safer, but still appropriate for their skill sets. There's a recently published Cornell Climate Jobs Report for Pennsylvania, which highlights dozens of opportunities to accelerate clean energy projects, and these include options like renewable energy construction, clean energy manufacturing, as well as building a climate-resilient infrastructure in the state. Gas workers do end up facing the highest pollution and exposure to fracking pollutants. Those handling fracking fluids as well as wastewater from the industry come into toxic chemicals, or to come into contact, I should say, with toxic chemicals and radiation. There's a 2017 study that found over 1,100 chemicals that are used in fracking fluids, but only just over 100 of those contaminants had health data to actually use to study. And of this, 29 were linked to cancer, 17 to leukemia or lymphoma. And the fact is many of these chemicals themselves aren't disclosed, so they're difficult to study. So in conclusion, the committee should not lose sight of the renewability and climate impact of fracked gas. Gas is a non-renewable resource, and this means that if Pennsylvania continues to extract it, it will run out. Sun and wind won't. Burning gas would emit billions of tons of climate pollutants, which will heat and destroy our planet, and this is an unavoidable consequence of continuing to burn gas. Renewables and energy storage, in contrast, are cheap and accessible energy alternatives that provide good jobs and reliable energy and help us avoid climate disaster. Despite being a significant producer of gas, Pennsylvania continues to pay the price in public health harms, energy price volatility, and economic stability. Diversifying and adopting renewable energy can mitigate many of the concerns we discussed today, including making our energy future more secure. So thank you all for taking the time, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Liu. We'll answer the questions and answers as soon as everyone has spoken. Next, we'll hear from Energy Association of Pennsylvania. Please identify yourself for the record.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. My name is Andrew Tubbs. I'm the president of the Energy Association of Pennsylvania. We represent the electric and natural gas distribution utilities throughout the Commonwealth. We are the voice of the electric and energy industry here in Pennsylvania, and we're happy to be here. I provided a number of slides, which I'm not going to walk through. Quite candidly, the conversation changed a little bit here this morning with the opening testimony. I think the intent to learn about where the gas and how it's moved, I'll still walk through, but try to tie a little bit into the comments you just heard, which I don't fully agree with. I think the production, which Mr. Welty was to cover, and he did cover in his slides, highlights where the gas comes from. I think the important thing is that gas that comes from the wells, both here in Pennsylvania and across the country, are moved through a transmission interstate system. Think about that sort of like the highway, and there are high pressure lines that move the gas from various locations throughout Pennsylvania. And they're delivered to not only distribution utilities like our members, like Philadelphia Gas Works, but also large industrial customers directly, and into storage, which is a really important conversation to have in this time. Natural gas storage, both at the transmission and distribution level, are critical to meet the energy needs of our consumers, not just today, but going forward. I think that the distribution facilities that your constituents rely upon every single day are a part of not only providing heat and to cook their food in their homes, but it's also part of the economic viability of the communities in which they live. If you think about the distribution utilities that you represent in your districts, they are investing millions of dollars annually into communities across this country. I took over this position in the end of January, and prior to that, I was with Columbia Gas for 10 years. So I tend to come with sort of my background from Columbia Gas. But if you think about a utility like Columbia Gas that provides natural gas distribution service to 26 counties out of the 67, 450 different communities, and they're investing hundreds of millions of dollars annually to replace aging infrastructure. And that aging infrastructure is reducing methane emissions and making those pipes more effective and safer, but also having a positive impact on the environment. I think the testimony about the price, I take umbrage with. I disagree with what she's saying. I think the economic viability of the state is imperatively based upon natural gas. I think when we're talking about House Bill 505 or Act 129 and how that bill got created back in 2008, it was because of the big price spikes that people were focused on in the electric industry. But those really didn't happen because of the Marcellus Shale and because of the natural gas that was located here and used to produce. I think what we've seen since 1997 is an increased reliance on natural gas, a clean burning fuel, to meet the energy needs of the Commonwealth. And that's not going to go away. I don't think anyone here at this table is arguing against the benefits of solar or wind. I think it really is an all hands on deck, use all the resources that we have, and we're blessed in Pennsylvania with many, and we should be relying on all of them. And I think that that's kind of the conversation we should be having. I think when you talk about the economic benefit as well, when I talk about the hundreds of millions of dollars in these communities, it's hundreds of employees, it's contractors by the thousands that are working daily and meeting their needs, living in the communities which they grew up to serve the customers of Pennsylvania. So it has like this rippling effect into the economy of Pennsylvania, which is important. I think the investment that's being done is being guided by significant regulation, both at the federal and state level. And that is not to be lost. And I think that regulation, some folks talk about regulation being difficult, and I think Jim and I talked about this over lunch recently, is our regulation, the regulation of our industry is important. It needs to be done, but it needs to be done the right way, and it is being done. I think the Public Utility Commission and PHMSA are doing a great job of regulating our industry, and we make changes when we need to make changes. I think other than that, I think the distribution system improvement charge that was passed in 2012 or back in the 90s allows us to invest dollars in infrastructure to make those the facilities safer and to meet the needs of the future. I'm going to pause there, and then I'll let Melody and others go, and we can look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Next, we will hear from my favorite, Philadelphia Gas Works. Please identify yourself for the record.
Good morning, Chairman Burgos and members of the committee. My name is Melanie McCautry. I am Chief of Staff and Senior Vice President of Philadelphia Gas Works, commonly referred to as PGW. Thank you. We are proud members of EAP. We work with Andy and his staff on behalf of all of the utilities across the state, electric and natural gas. My invitation today, I hope to just give a different lens to the way that PGW is situated, we are not an investor-owned utility. We are a municipally owned utility, which is extremely unique. We are the largest natural gas utility in the country, and so we serve over 500,000 customers, overwhelmingly residential. So 95% of our customer base is residential customers. The closest other municipally owned gas utility in the state is in Chambersburg with about 6,500 customers. We have 1,600 employees at PGW, 1,100 of them union covered. And so to Andy's point about family-sustaining jobs, we are very proud to be able to provide that to so many in the city of Philadelphia. I will focus on our mission, which echo much of what Andy just covered, but we work every day to enhance the quality of life for all by delivering safe, reliable, and affordable energy in an environmentally responsible way. The city of Philadelphia owns a natural gas utility, so that means that the city owns 9 city gate stations, 2 liquefied natural gas facilities, which include a 78 billion cubic feet LNG storage. We also have a gas control center, combined heat and power facilities, our main offices, and two operational centers. That means that, you know, as a municipally owned utility, the one part that makes us, as I mentioned, unique is that we possess 3 fundamental tools to keep PGW's delivery safe, reliable, and efficient. We can seek to uncover new sources of revenue, which we are constantly looking for opportunities where we can find additional revenue to come into our business. We can cut costs and increase efficiencies, or we can raise rates, which means that our customers are paying more. In this particular environment now, just over this last year, we are $700 million revenue collected in this last year. So that $700 million covers a commodity cost of paying for natural gas. And in this last year, we were probably the lowest. We were able to, because of the folks that work at PGW, purchase gas at the lowest price possible. And one of the reasons that we were able to keep prices so low is our LNG facility. Our ability to store gas on site in the city of Philadelphia saves our customers significantly. It's been over $4 billion that our customers have been able to save because Philadelphia has the unique asset of an LNG facility. We also, with that revenue, pay for all of our low-income programs. I would say that PGW isn't often viewed this way, but we're probably one of the largest social service agencies in the city of Philadelphia. We support, every year, we spend $80 million to support the energy costs of Philadelphia's financially vulnerable customers, and we spend thousands of dollars annually to reduce customer usage, which you would think we would be in the opposite business. But actually, as we continue to grow, we're growing customers every single year. We're reducing emissions as a company, and that's because of the money that we're spending to help our customers be more energy efficient. Our Energy Sense program, which offers all sorts of weatherization, especially in our low-income population of customers, because of our municipal ownership, that balance, so anything that we spend has to recover our costs. So anything we can do to reduce the cost for our customers means that everybody is paying less, which we're really committed to trying to make sure to do. In that other part of the city's ownership is our infrastructure, vast. We have 6,000 miles of underground infrastructure. In this past, I'll transition to just this last year, one of the exciting things talking about reducing emissions, we received $125 million from the federal government's Reinvestment Act, which we're using those dollars to accelerate our main replacement. We've got, right now, of our 6,000 miles, 1,100 of it is still cast iron. We have probably the most in the state. And so that money is significant. We're going to reduce additional 66 miles of infrastructure that our customers will not have to pay, because right now, otherwise, they're paying for those, through their rates. I'd also just add from our structure, we didn't talk about this, but PGW came under the jurisdiction of the Pennsylvania Utility Commission in 2000. So we have a unique structure. The utilities that Andy mentioned are all under the jurisdiction of the PUC. PGW, as a municipally owned utility, has a pretty a very complex structure on top of just the PUC. We also have oversight from 4 other regulating bodies. So our mayor, our city council, we have what we call a gas commission, which has appointments from both the mayor and the city council. So we have significant regulation over PGW, making sure that we're doing the most to make sure that our customers are receiving the greatest service. I guess lastly, I'll close on here is just our financial structure, and I think to touch on what this committee is highly familiar with. PGW has worked significantly to improve our collection rate. It was in the early 2000s, part of when we were put under the jurisdiction of the PUC. Our bond rating at that point was just above junk. And so it was through the bold action from the legislature in 2004 instituting Chapter 14, which has been a significant contributor to PGW's financial recovery. In the deck that I provided, there's information there that talks about that, but you can see there's a chart enclosed that shows our bad debt expense and the impact that Chapter 14 had on PGW's ability to collect, and also, most importantly, get our lowest income customers into programs, getting them inside of our customer responsibility program, getting them, connecting them with LAHEAP dollars, which was significant. The finances of being a municipally owned utility, the finances of PGW, the City of Philadelphia is the guarantee of our debt. They hold our bonds. So our financial wellness is important to the City of Philadelphia. If PGW were to fail financially, that would have a significant immediate impact on the City of Philadelphia. So the action like Chapter 14 from members from this committee and others is really important to PGW. In the last slide of the deck I shared, I think what's also important is just how our customers feel about the work that we're doing. And so I shared in the deck our last poll with our customers that show, their significant satisfaction in the way that we provide service, in the investment that we're continuing to make in our infrastructure, the work that we're doing to reduce the emissions, the programs that we offer for weatherization and for assistance with their payments. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, and I appreciate the opportunity this morning to share a little bit about PGW. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will hear from Marcellus Shale Coalition. Could you please identify yourself for the record?
Thank you, Chairman Burgos and Chairman Metzger, members of the Consumer Protection Technologies and Utilities Committee. It's great to be here. My name is Jim Welty, and I'm the president of the Marcellus Shale Coalition. The Marcellus Shale Coalition is the statewide trade association that represents unconventional shale gas development that's going on in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So our producers are the ones that are drilling and producing the gas out of the ground. Our midstream companies are the ones that are processing and transporting the gas to markets. And then we have a number of association members that are the service, supply chain, and trade unions that do business with those operators around the Commonwealth. We've got about 150 members representing 95% of the gas that's produced here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and I'm proud to work with them on a daily basis. In addition to that, we've got about 13 technical committees that are focused, much like the General Assembly, in various areas of specifics, whether it be air quality, water and waste. All of those committees are made up of experts within the area, trying to raise the bar not just on how we operate, but also with respect to our relationship and regulations under which we operate. I shared with you a list of slides that take you through the ABCs of shale gas development. I encourage you to take a look at those, and certainly we would be happy to circle back to walk you through those, but I thought I'd take the opportunity today to talk a little bit about some of the things that have been characterized as to how our industry operates. First and foremost, we are probably one of the most heavily regulated industries in the Commonwealth, if not the nation. Numerous laws apply to how we operate. The Oil and Gas Act, the Clean Streams Law, Air Pollution Control Act, the Radiation Protection Act, Solid Waste Management Act, Unconventional Well Emergency Response Act, Federal and State Pipeline Safety Acts, and of course, the PA One Call Law. Each and every one of these laws have a series of regulations under which we operate as well. Those regulations are some of the most stringent in the country, as identified by third parties. And in addition to those regulations, any number of permits that fall under those various acts that I talk about. Our operators take their compliance very seriously. It's why when you look at the DEP database, you can find a compliance rate of over 97% for unconventional shale operators. And we stand by that because that's what we do. We try and elevate the bar on how we operate every day. With respect to health benefits, thanks to the switchover from natural gas for electric power generation in the Commonwealth, since 2005, Pennsylvanians have seen reductions in nitrous oxides and sulfur oxides of 93% and 98% respectively, and VOCs of 48%. Using the same methodology that both DEP and EPA have used, this translates between $500 billion to over $1 trillion in public health benefits. I'm going to emphasize that. Employing the exact same formula that DEP and EPA have used to calculate health benefits related to emission reductions, this is what has been achieved to date in the power sector, all because of the onset of shale gas development in Pennsylvania. With respect to carbon emissions, in that same power sector, we've seen a 46% reduction in carbon emissions. Compared to RGGI, which PA-DEP has modeled as a net reduction of just 0.17% in 2030, that 46% reduction pales that number in comparison. So that 46% reduction, by the way, is the same amount as taking 12.5 million cars off the road. That's all the cars in Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maryland, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Vermont. That's also the same formula that's been used by this administration to talk about benefits of certain solar facilities. And like Mr. Tubbs said, we are an all-the-above organization. We support all forms of energy. We believe natural gas is the most logical one, in part because of some of the benefits that I've outlined here. With respect to methane, so methane can be measured. It's basically the very product that we're producing so that we can sell. So our operators have every incentive to be capturing every molecule of methane because that's the dollars that they're trying to receive for the product. And given this, it's no surprise that the methane intensity, which is the quantity of methane released into the atmosphere relative to the amount of oil and gas production, that methane intensity in the Appalachian Basin is recognized by the Clean Air Task Force as having the lowest methane intensity of any basin in the United States. So third parties have also looked at the methane intensity as the United States as a whole and found the United States is one of the lowest in the world. We have in the Appalachian Basin one of the lowest methane intensities in the country, thereby in the world. If you compare that, for example, as the International Energy Agency did, to Russian-produced gas, their production is 60% more in methane intensity than the U.S. It's why our allies are clamoring for our power, for our gas, because we make it cleaner, and we are their allies to ensure that their power needs are met. As it relates to the health effects of development attributed to the University of Pittsburgh study, it's simply inaccurate. On asthma, despite misleading media headlines, the data within the University of Pitt Health Study demonstrated that during the period of 2014 through 2020, which is what it looked at, despite a 200% increase in production, severe cases of asthma declined by 50%. That's what that study said if you read it and you look at the data within it. And quite frankly, this number is conservative. The Pitt researchers deviated from accepted methodologies and characterized nearly all asthma cases as severe, despite many cases meeting the accepted medical definitions of either mild or accurate. So those numbers were inflated. With respect to cancer and with respect to lymphoma, the Pitt researchers found that any association was still extraordinarily limited, 0.006% compared to typical occurrences in the population at large. And even with this association, the Pitt researchers assumed people never moved from their place of birth. They didn't consider smoking status, prenatal care, or other lifestyle genetic factors. They didn't consider any other potential environmental exposures in proximity to the home. They failed to correlate the age of diagnosis and exposure with the presence of actual natural gas development. In other words, if someone was diagnosed with cancer in 2014 and development in that area did not occur till 2018, they were still lumped into this study. And even with all these limitations, the Pitt Health researchers stated, no evidence was found to support an association between exposures to natural gas activities and other environmental factors and the risk of leukemia tumors and malignant bone tumors, including Ewing's family of tumors. Much more information on these studies can be found with information that's been submitted for the record. So in conclusion, on the shale gas industry, we support over 123,000 jobs across the Commonwealth, family-sustaining jobs everywhere from GEDs to PhDs. The average wage of those jobs is 150% more than the median income in Pennsylvania. The industry accounts for over $41 billion in economic growth in the Commonwealth, pays over $6 billion in federal, state, and local taxes and fees annually, and pays over $6 billion in royalties to private landowners and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We provide critical baseload power, producing 60% of our electricity and powering the heat of over 50% of the homes in the Commonwealth directly. The bottom line is natural gas is essential to our very quality of life. It is a basic feedstock for everything we touch and use today in the natural gas liquids, and it's even essential to everything we do on the healthcare side of things. So with that, I'll wrap up. Happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. First question, Ms. Representative Isaacson.
Thank you. Good morning. This question is to PGW. By the way, I do want to compliment you on the work of PGW, certainly helping us in our district offices as a representative from Philadelphia and making sure that our constituents are taken care of and have access is greatly appreciated. But on one side, I wanted to talk to you. What is PGW's methane reduction program? And how are you working to meet goals of reducing methane? We are in an intense urban environment, and you spoke about the ability to store the LNG, but also we obviously have residents that live near there. There is no place that we don't have residents living. So just to protecting the environmental side as well as the good work you do on the provider side. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thank you as my representative. I appreciate the appreciation. I will share, we have a very robust methane reduction program. We actually, we measure we use three scopes. So there's scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. So we are measuring our emissions of our actual usage of the utility itself. We're taking a look at the end use that of anything that we procure, the emissions of the electric that we use and other sorts of sources that come into the company. And we're also measuring the emissions of our customers. And so we took that step, which is not where a lot of folks are yet, but we are very proud of the fact that we are looking at all three scopes to measure our methane impact. I think two of the most significant items that we're doing to mitigate against methane emissions, which I mentioned in my brief remarks, is our cast iron main replacement program. That every year we're looking at over 35 miles of infrastructure that we replace and make that new and improved and no longer cast iron, which immediately mitigates any emissions along those updated pipelines. The other program, which I touched on a little bit, but it is our Energy Sense program, which we are not mandated to do. We took that on our own. So we, through our customer base, are spending, I think to date now, over $75 million that we've invested to improve the housing stock in the city of Philadelphia. What that does is go into homes and take a look at their equipment, if there's improvements that we can make. And it's not just us, we're working with other programs across the city, so basic systems repair and some of the other programs. If we can't address it, we're connecting customers there. Especially in, the housing stock in Philadelphia is not new. It's one of the old, it's very old. So anything we can do to try and address issues within the home, which I think is a shared effort across the city, and we've worked with many different legislators and council members on reaching out to their constituents to try and connect them to those services. But those are probably the two most significant pieces that we are focused on. And then, I'd add, we are looking into some new innovation, and so anything that can help to really lower our footprint. In some respects, the city owns the utility, so our job is just to maintain it and make sure that it continues to be safe. And because natural gas is so affordable, it really is the best solution for the customers in Philadelphia. But to some extent, we're agnostic, so we are looking at other new energy sources, but we have to be very careful about how we're looking at that. This year, we launched a pilot feasibility study to take a look at geothermal, which we are excited about. But we have to take a lot of slow-moving steps to figure out how we would recover costs and those sorts of things as we move down the way. But we are doing that with a school within the school district. The other reason why that's important is we hope that if we are able to find a site that we can actually have a geothermal location, we can duplicate that effort and make the city even greener and cleaner, just like our mayor is pushing all of us to do.
Thank you.
Representative Hogan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you all for your testimony. My question's more kind of just open to whoever wants to take it. There's been some talk really about our infrastructure in Pennsylvania. It's an aging infrastructure. It's, just needs a lot of work. So right now, what are the largest impediments to improving that infrastructure in Pennsylvania? And then I guess as a follow-up question, as members of the General Assembly here, what can we be doing to support the industry, but more importantly, make sure that Pennsylvanians have plenty of energy for all of their needs? I just saw today Amazon's announcing $20 billion investment in data centers, and this is only going to continue, and it's only going to have a larger impact on our grid. And as much as I love renewables, I have a solar generator at home. I'm going to be the owner of a Tesla by the end of the month. We need natural gas as well. So whoever wants to take that, please.
I'll go ahead and get started. I think what you're seeing, if you listen to Melanie speak, it's the investments being made now by your distribution utilities to make sure that the infrastructure is there, that it's safe and reliable to meet the needs, and that includes building out to meet those that are underserved or unserved at the moment in the Commonwealth. I think the distribution system improvement charge that I mentioned earlier in my testimony was a big driver. I think that really has resulted in the mileage. Even if you look at a most recent Public Utility Commission report, it went from about 30 miles back in the 90s to over 80 miles of pipe being replaced by your utilities, and some are even closer to 100 miles being replaced a year. And that is making a huge difference, both to meet the needs to get the gas where it needs to go, but also having the reduction in methane emissions. I don't know if Jim, you want to add anything?
Yeah, as Andy talked about, particularly in the distribution side, for the ability to get gas from the producers into the market, we certainly need more infrastructure in place. And the reason being is if you think about Harrisburg, for example, and the bridges coming over to Harrisburg, there's 6 bridges, right? Imagine there only being one bridge from the West Shore to the East Shore here. That forces all the traffic on the one bridge. And that's basically what we're looking at right now in terms of being able to get supply to market in the natural gas play. We need more infrastructure so that there's more assured ways to be getting that supply to market. But most importantly, quite frankly, we need to be developing those markets here so the transmission of that gas does not have to be long haul. And that's what creates the economic opportunity here for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
Thank you. And then, again, as a follow-up, I mean, what else can we be doing to make sure that there is sufficient energy moving forward in Pennsylvania? I mean, is it investing more so that we're drilling more, or is it improving our infrastructure so that, do we have to generate more here in Pennsylvania? I mean, what are some options for us? Because we talk about it a lot here, especially in this committee, but we haven't been talking a whole lot of solutions right now to prevent potential brownouts and other issues in the near future.
So I think my slides speak a little bit to this. And you probably hear of the Henry Hub or NYMEX price of gas as kind of the standard of what the cost of gas is, what the price of gas is that's being received by producers across the United States. Here in Pennsylvania, we receive anywhere between 20 to 40 cents below that, 20 to 40 cents below that, or percent below that. Reason being is because we can't get that gas to market. So we have an incredible amount of supply, but we don't have that infrastructure in place. So if there were one magic wand to wave, it would be being able to have that infrastructure in place so that we can get that gas to the market. Right now, what we see in terms of kind of that restriction is what's holding full development back. And we've got enough supply here for over 100 years to not just fuel our needs, but fuel the needs of our allies across the Atlantic.
Is that because of permits, like the process to get the permits going through EPA, DEP?
Yeah, that is one huge component to it, is the hurdle on getting the permits in place and getting them in a timely fashion.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just say on the distribution level, just to add on permitting and restoration, that's a big issue for the utilities presently. Is when you're working in multiple counties with hundreds of different communities with all different rules. When you're doing a large project and it crosses over borders, you're dealing with different rules and regulations and permits and permit fees, and trying to work through that and make sure that those fees are associated with the administration of the permit, so we're not adding costs or paving costs that are unnecessary for the overall project. And because we're spending money on restoration that's not necessary, it's taking away from the investment in the infrastructure and the pipes that we're replacing on an annual basis.
Representative Hohenstein.
Thank you, Chair. I also want to extend my thanks to PGW. I have those the largest of your LNG storage facilities right in my district, and I had the opportunity to do a tour of it and got a lot of my questions answered. And like my colleague from Philadelphia, I'll note many of our constituents, close to half, rely upon LIHEAP and some of the other programs that you've discussed, and rely upon that reliable source of energy that you guys have at PGW. My question is primarily for you, sir, from the Marcellus Shale. I'm looking at your the slide that you provided that talks about our generation by fuel source. And I appreciate everyone who talks about wanting to make sure that we have all of the above in our energy mix. And I personally believe that when we have a variety and diversity of sources of energy, we also have lower costs for our consumers. We can focus on things like lower transportation costs. For example, PGW working on a biofuels plant right next to its LNG plant with the Philadelphia Water Department that's taking advantage of biomethane to produce a lot of electricity that's used right there in those two facilities and other places as well. I believe we need diversification in large part also because of one of the features that you mentioned, which is a concern for the natural gas industry, and that's getting energy to market. Sustainable energy sources, geothermal in particular, but also wind and solar, have the feature of being able to travel very few miles from production to use. And I worry that the reliance on a transportation infrastructure that could be vulnerable to attack and also adds to consumer costs is a real concern. But my primary question for you is, I see in the last 25 years, by your own chart, the X graph between the coal industry and the natural gas industry. And now, it used to be coal producing close to 60% of our energy. Now it is natural gas. And I really appreciate all of the things you've said about the idea that natural gas is a lower emitting fuel, obviously, than coal. But we're getting back now to the point of no return. And economically, I'm concerned that 60% represents too large of a market share for any single source of energy. So what would be your position on doing something similar to what Texas is doing, which is to support a robust shale and natural gas industry and petroleum industry, along with being leaders in solar and wind and other sustainable energy, and making sure that the state has the resources and the funding coming from the natural gas industry to do so?
Thank you for the question, Representative. And let me start backwards with respect to making sure the state has the resources. As my testimony pointed out, over $6 billion annually in federal, state, and local taxes are paid here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania by the industry. So significant contributor from an economic perspective. In terms of the balance of energy, the reason that we went from 5% of the portfolio being natural gas electric generation to 60% is because the free market saw the opportunity. So the free markets allowed us to kind of grow and do that, and what translated into a displacement of the coal. There was over $13 billion of private investment into the Commonwealth for natural gas generation. That investment dried up when Governor Wolf entered us into RGGI. There has been virtually $0 of private investment since then. Instead, what we're seeing is those private investments go to Ohio, West Virginia, and other states to build natural gas generation. Like it or not, natural gas generation is here to stay, and it should be and can be a significant component of our electricity generation. That said, we support all forms of energy being at the table. We ask for it to be a level playing field and let it be market-driven. In fact, you can't make a solar panel without natural gas liquids, the very baseload chemical component of what you're building in solar panels. And you've probably seen the studies. The natural gas flowback has significant lithium, which can be used in the batteries that help maintain solar and wind generation. So we're in all of the above, but we're bullish on gas because it's right here under our feet, and we have an opportunity. We need to be taking advantage of that opportunity. Unfortunately, it's slipping through our fingers, and those economic opportunities are going to other states.
I do agree with you that there is an all of the above approach that we need. My concern is when a market share for one single source of energy, be it coal, be it natural gas, even if it were to be solar, would reduce our flexibility and also raise costs. And that's what I'm concerned about right now, is seeing the potential impact for one industry to then determine all of the costs for all of the consumers up and down. And I do appreciate that we do need natural gas. We absolutely do. I also think we need a more balanced portfolio.
Representative Pielli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, everyone, for testifying. I have a question for anyone to answer. How much of the Pennsylvania shale gas is being exported overseas? A percentage?
I don't have an actual percentage of what's being exported. I can tell you that there's a significant amount of it that's being sent down to the Gulf Coast, that's being liquefied and sent across. I think that really underscores why I said earlier that we need to be utilizing the gas here and utilizing the economic opportunity here, and siting an LNG facility in Philadelphia or the near region so that we're just sending it there and our allies are getting it quicker and a much more cost-effective means makes a lot of sense. But I don't have the exact number of how much is being utilized. Because once those molecules go into a transmission line, they get mixed with other molecules, and you can't track molecule by molecule.
I'm hearing in the past is up to like 90% of the shale gas is going overseas. And I don't know if that's true or not, so I was hoping that you gentlemen, being in the industry, would know that. The other question I have is, better distribution. You just mentioned you have a lot of supply, but, you need to get better distribution to get to the customers, and that means more pipelines. Being in a district where we had the Marcellus Shale come through, it's very disruptive. It did have some impacts. I know you've mentioned that you don't necessarily agree with what some of the studies out there have cited, including University of Pittsburgh. What I haven't heard from you is about drinking water, which we all know has been a problem, starting in Dimmock and even in my region. We've had people that have had their drinking water adversely affected to such an extent that Sunoco, now Energy Transfer, actually had to buy out a kind of whole neighborhood. People eventually had to move because they couldn't just keep drinking bottled water. And we've been hearing those horror stories. They're true stories. They affect people. These are people's homes. People rely on clean drinking water. It's actually part of our Constitution, Article 1, Section 27, that we should have clean drinking water. I would like to know, with your plans or your aspirations for more pipelines, more distribution that is going to be terribly disruptive to some communities like mine. What are your plans to improve as an industry? Because what I've seen in the past has been deplorable, and just moving forward quickly and begging for forgiveness later and making it up. And it's affected people's lives really bad, really adversely. So I'm for all of the above. I do believe that natural gas has a place, a very important place here. I think we could be a premier state in energy for the benefit of our own residents. But I'm very, very leery of more pipeline production without having a lot of improvements going forward.
So let me start by addressing the production side of things. There's been no demonstration by the data that there's been an impact on drinking water. And in fact, there's been studies that suggest that's just the opposite. In fact, the SRBC, Susquehanna River Basin Commission, which oversees the entire basin, has said specifically there is no discernible impact on the quality or quantity of the water in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
So you're telling me in my district, where Energy Transfer took responsibility for it, they just did that out of the benefit, just to seem like nice guys, that they didn't have an effect on the drinking water of the people in my community?
If you listen to me, I said on the production side. Now, if I may, turn to the midstream side. If you look at two specific pipelines that were put in place in Pennsylvania, major ones, Atlantic Sunrise, which basically ran from northeastern Pennsylvania down south, north to south, and then Mariner 2, which ran from western PA to eastern Pennsylvania. You see a huge distinction. That is the number of required HDDs, horizontal directional drilling, that their permits suggested. I think it was a handful for Atlantic Sunrise, and it was over 100 for Mariner East. When you do HDD, you do have flowback when you do horizontal directional drilling. It's just part of it. But it was a permit requirement that Energy Transfer was required to operate under. And so when those instances occurred where there was impact to water because of that pipeline, they took responsibility and addressed the situation. The goal there is work with the Department of Environmental Protection to ensure the most efficient and effective manner, both environmentally and economically, to put those pipes in the ground. Again, Atlantic Sunrise had almost no impacts to water, and they only had a handful of HDDs.
If I may just really quickly jump in, I do have to leave in just a moment, but I wanted to provide some pushback on the point about production side having no impact on drinking water. I can point you to studies that have been done on residents' well waters and what contaminants are present there. The study that I mentioned in my testimony, and it's cited in the longer written comments that I submitted have pointed out over 1,000 different chemicals that are present in the water used to drill wells. And this is water that's being taken up from the Commonwealth. This is directly impacting the people, as your representative have highlighted, who live on the front lines of this industry.
Chairman Metzger.
The Clean Air Council has successfully lobbied to eliminate coal generation effectively in our area, and in turn, in my area, just eliminated thousands of jobs and destroyed thousands of lives. And in your words, created in your testimony near grid failure and rapidly rising electric rates. And now we have, as you said, historic reliance on natural gas for both the generation and heating in Pennsylvania. I guess my question to you is, with hundreds of thousands of gas jobs at stake and millions, more importantly, relying on natural gas for heating and electric generation, why should we listen to a single thing that the Clean Air Council has to say on this issue?
Thank you for your question. I recognize, as I wrote in my testimony, that natural gas production is a huge part of the Commonwealth's not only energy source, but people rely on this industry for their livelihood. But I would say there is a certain, with all due respect, fallacy to thinking that because we rely on this source of energy to power our homes and such, that is the only viable source of energy that we can use. We're seeing the effectiveness and success of renewable energy in other states. And quite frankly, a lot of the health studies out there are showing that people who are living on the front lines of the industry, people who are working in the industry, are not only being exposed to a huge amount of pollutants, many of them unknown with respect to their health impacts on the human body, but they end up being faced with job uncertainty as these industries go away, as we saw with the coal industry, and you just spoke to that. These are market forces that are changing the energy landscape in the Commonwealth and also in the country. And I think it is in the best interest of Pennsylvanians to consider how we can best transition our workforce and think about where our future as a Commonwealth is going with respect to energy development.
It's not a market force whenever you lobby to change the rules and regulations that govern the industry and put them out of business. And you're trying to do the same thing to the gas industry that you did to the coal industry.
I would just like to point out the composition of the testifiers here today. I think it would be a little unfair to potentially attribute the entire failure of an industry to one environmental organization. That's all I would like to say.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everyone for their time and attendance. For information of the members, testimony for the record was submitted by American Petroleum Institute, Pennsylvania chapter, and the Pennsylvania Independent Oil and Gas Association. We are adjourned.